Hello, everyone. Today we are sharing a testimony of faith, and I have with me Jennifer White. She's going to share her story today on how she's overcome many challenges and became a testimony for you guys to learn how to rely on your own faith as you go through daily barriers and challenges your own self. How are you today, Jennifer?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks for coming. Can you tell us a bit about your background and your story?
Sure. So, um, I was a nurse for about 35 years and I worked in a variety of settings. And I spent a lot of time surrounded by death and dying and miracles that have happened over the course of my career, seeing people bounce back from things that were really quite um, unimaginable. And then in my own life, I was retired and I was enjoying my retirement. And then all of a sudden, one day I didn't feel well, ended up in hospital, and found out I had a large brain tumor that needed to come out. The only thing that could be done was surgery. So I had to undergo surgery. After my surgery, I was actually in a coma for a few days, which was unexpected. And I know that my husband was quite anxious during that time. After I woke up, I was tied to the bed because I had tried to rip everything off as I was coming to. And I noticed the first thing I noticed was that the man standing at the end of the bed was someone I didn't recognize. Well, it was my husband. And basically I realized then that some of my memories were gone. As I continued to recover in hospital, I realized there were a lot of things I couldn't remember, including my name, what city I lived in, and those kinds of things. And I had to relearn how to walk and talk. So I did have quite a traumatic experience. Now, I've always been a spiritual person. I was raised in the church, and I certainly believe in life after death for me. And I came to realize during this particular experience that I am a spiritual being having a human experience, which means that my body is basically a package, and the package needed to be repaired, and it was. But through this whole endeavor, I had a very strong connection with who I would call God for me. And, you know, it took a lot of strength and courage to keep going. And the infinite was beside me the entire time during that journey.
Well, that's awesome to know that you were able to experience embracement from God throughout these, challenging process. Now, I wonder what are some things that you would like to share that helped you keep your faith as you were recovering from such a traumatic event, being in a coma and having to relearn how to do daily tasks all over again.
Sure. I think probably one of the first things that I did is when I learned I had this diagnosis, I spent time meditating and praying and sharing my fear and my anxiety and asking for support to get through this. I even had my minister come and give me communion before I went for surgery because I felt strongly that I needed to have that um, connection before I went into surgery. As I was talking to God, I kept reminding myself that I wasn't going through this alone, that He would be there for me and He would look after me. I knew that I could potentially die on the operating table. I mean, it was that critical a surgery that I had to have. And, you know, I went through the process of really looking back at my life and taking stock of what I had done in terms of following God's path, in terms of giving back to people, um, sharing what I had with others, being compassionate, and all of those things that we learn that God wants us to do. So I felt fairly good about what I had accomplished, but I told him as I was being wheeled into surgery, I said, you know, please, I'm not done yet. So if you can find a way to keep me going, I think there's still things that I can offer back, and I would like to know that you know that. So I actually had an incredible sense of calm as I was being wheeled into surgery, almost like I knew that there was a big hug there and that I was going to get through this. So it was kind of shocking when I had to reinvent myself. But then I asked God, I said, so what was this all about? What was the coma all about? What was the whole tumor thing all about? What were you trying to tell me? And all I kept hearing in my mind was, you weren't listening. You weren't doing what you could do. There was more for you to give. So he said, I basically reset your brain. And I kind of laughed at that. And I thought, well, you certainly did that. He said, but, as I was thinking about it, I was thinking, well, in many ways, he gave me a clean slate to try over, to do more, to try something different. So
Yes.
that's the way I look at it. That being a spiritual being, he gave me an opportunity to push even further than I had gone and try something different.
So I want to touch on the concept you gave us in the beginning that you are a spiritual being and a human experience with your body being a package. So would you agree that your spiritual being was threatened throughout this process, even though your body experienced all these traumatic events, you actually became more spiritual and gained more of a connection to what you call God as well?
Well, certainly. I feel a very strong connection with God, and I've changed in my new self, my new normal, is that I talk to him on a daily basis, much more frequently and in simple ways, being grateful for what I have and what opportunities are coming my way. Um, Being more aware of what's happening around me and how his presence is in our lives. And we live such busy lives that we've never really stopped and thought about, like nature and the sunsets and the things that are there every day for us to remind us that there is something bigger out there than us as human beings.
Yes.
So I think it really has brought me much closer.
I'm glad to hear that. I guess my only question aside from that would be, do you believe that having a near-death experience also allowed you to be more grateful for the fact that you are alive, even though you went through such a hard process and had to overcome on self-reliance and reliance on your faith?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm definitely closer. I don't know whether the near death thing is, yeah, like I didn't actually experience any connection. You know how some people say when they're lying on an operating table, they can look down and see themselves. I didn't see that. What I felt more was when I woke up, I wasn't afraid because even though I knew I had deficits, I felt comforted. So I can only attribute that to God being there for me as I woke up and saying, you got this, you can do this. Don't be afraid. There'll be some challenges, but keep going.
Great. Thank you so much for that honesty. And so you would say that it was God all along who you had to rely on to actually overcome.
Oh, I believe so. Yeah. I think he encourages me every day, and I'm grateful that I wake up every day and keep on going. I think we need to acknowledge his presence much more in our lives, and I want people to realize that if you ask for help, you will get help. If you ask for guidance, you will get guidance. I believe He is there for us and He allows us to make our own decisions, but is there kind of nudging us along gently to say, you know, you have value, you have purpose, find it. And for me, I guess this particular incident helped me focus on what's possible.
Well, I'm glad you see it that way, and I'm glad that you also learned your own spiritual connection to God throughout the process. And thank you so much for being here today to share with others so that they can also do their best to find their purpose, become more closer to God and what it all means to be spiritual in a human experience. So
Well,
I'll
thanks for having me. I appreciate sharing.
thank you. So I'll definitely keep you as a connection and we'll work together soon. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.